Hi guys, back in the workshop again, and now my attention is moving on to the fuselage and joining the tail pieces together, maybe putting the turtle deck on and so on and so forth. So this is the next chapter in the build of the Galaxy Models Mystique. Hope you enjoy it. The next thing on the fuselage is to bring the tail, the sides in. I've already chamfered the stringers, as you can see there, and the support, triangular bits of balsa, so that I can bring that in. There's a tail post which I need to glue in. It's quite handy in this kit because they're all numbered. So that's the tail post. You can see it's machined, and the idea being that that fits in between there like that as the tail post. Okay, but in order for me to make sure everything is square, I've got to make sure the fuselage is lined up. So I've drawn on the reverse of the plan, I've drawn a centre line. Obviously I've had a jig. I have got a jig, but I can't be bothered to get it. If I had a jig, I'd go and get it and use that, but this is good enough. I've drawn a centre line down there. I've drawn the width of the fuselage. I've put a centre line marking on this former here, so I can merrily plonk the fuselage in place, lining up the outer edges of the fuselage with my lines that I've just drawn. Just move that down a bit. That's better. So I know that the fuselage is square to the lines, which is absolutely fine. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pin the fuselage onto the building board, just so that it keeps it in place here. Here. And so this is where the jig would come in, because obviously that's going to hold it in place for you. But with that held in place, I can now bring the tail together. I'm just going to move the camera around a bit so you can see more clearly what I'm doing. So with the tail coming in, I can now position the tail over the centre line, making sure that it does in fact line up. Obviously if I build it to one side, it's going to be a kink in it. If I build it to the other side, be a kink in it that way. So fortunately when I'm bringing this in, it's pretty good. It's coming in spot on really to that centre line, which is good. I'm just doing it by eye. I'm quite pleased that my eye is pretty good. So what I will need to do though, is looking at this, is I'll need to trim off slightly one side of the fuselage, because that's slightly longer to give me my lining up position with the line. I need to trim that off, so let's just mark that, ready for me to cut. It's not a lot, it's only about, well, was it 1.5 mils, something like that. So remove the fuse. Oh, when did we shorten the name of a fuselage to fuse? Not wishing to decry our American cousins, but is that an Americanism? Who knows? But anyway, we call it fuse, don't we? And it's a fuselage. Hey-ho. Right, get the trusty razor saw out, swing camera around, and let's perform the cut. I say, it's not very much at all. There we go. Job done. Let's move now the fuselage, giving it its full name, back into position. And it's worthwhile spending a bit of time making sure everything lines up, because at the end of the day we don't want a banana shaped fuselage, which potentially we could end up with if I didn't do this. I could still end up with one, who knows. Hopefully not. Right, swing the camera back around to there. I can't look at the plan because it's upside down in there, but I know that the tail, the rear end piece here does actually go flush at the bottom. Post, the tail post, that was the word I was trying to think of. Goes flush at the bottom there. Okie doke. Right, let's put some glue onto that. Great, these non-drip spouts, but by golly, when the glue dries it doesn't half cling onto it. So let's just mark where I'm going to glue that to. There we go, bit of glue in the moulding there. I've got my pins, I've got my clamps ready. So bring that together. Again, looking at my centre line on the plan underneath and making sure that everything looks right, which it does. That holds that. Making that now lines up, stick another pin through there. Post looks square. Yep. And it looks upright as well. Good. Right, well I can let that dry now, and once that's dry, the next job will be to put the formers on for the turtle deck here, which I'll do once that's dry. You know what, guys, this is crazy weather. It's been, what, a day, maybe 2 days since I did the last little video which you'll have just seen, and the weather has just gone ridiculous again. It's wet. It's not windy, but it's coldish, sort of 7-8 degrees maximum. So yeah, not very enjoyable, but never mind. Anyway, back to the build. So as I said in the last one, we're now looking at the completing the rear deck of the Mystic. So I've got to put the formers in, which I've already done. So looking at other bits and pieces to put in place to complete the build. So let's have a look at the workbench to see where I am. And I'll do this by hand purely and simply because I want to zoom in or home in on some of the elements of it. So there you'll see I've got my formers in for the turtle deck. a tight fit, but they're in. And then looking at the plans, I've got all these various bits of balsa to fit here to complete the side. So looking at this goes on here like that, and then we've got this bit that sits on top of it like so there, and then round by the cockpit here I've got these pieces to fit, but there's also, if I look at it here, there's also a piece, an infill piece, which I presume is, I think it's cross, it's quite hard balsa actually, cross-grained across there as the floor to the cockpit. So I've got to stick all those in, and then there is a top which goes on here with a slot in it for the fin to go down. So that's what I'm going to be doing next, and I won't bother to bore you with me sticking those in place, so come back probably when it's finished. I said I'd come back when it's finished, but it's nearly finished. This is the turtle deck on the rear of the Mystic, and it's been an absolute pain. Various things that were wrong. I've got a fuselage side there that's about 3mm shorter than the other side, which I didn't realise. I should have done. So if obviously when I pinned this down, when I held it down to put the formers in slightly to one side, I've rectified that. The drawings and the instructions are not explicit about how everything fits together, and my fault really for not looking ahead into it, not thinking too much about it. There's a tail post, let's just bring that round here. There's a tail post here which comes down, and of course if you've got a tail post, it means that the way in which you put the elevator in, or sorry, your tailplane in, is going to be compromised by that post. Obviously you have to cut slots out for the tailplane, but if you think about it, you've got a tailplane like that, how the heck can you slot that in place when in fact the back of this edge, the hinge line I should say, has got to be on the rear of the tail post, because the way this thing works is that the rudder, let's just move that forward a bit so you can see what I'm talking about. The rudder sits tight against the back of the tail post. There's a cutout in the rudder obviously for the elevator to go up and down. But because of that, if the hinge line is there, then your hinge line of your fin has got to be on the back of that post, and that's exactly where the hinge line of the elevator is as well. So the elevator has got to sit there. It can't sit inside there because the cutout is in the rudder. So consequently, if you fitted, or as I have done, I fitted the tail post, because of the constraints that then imposes, what I've decided to do is to actually, once this is fully dried, I'm going to cut a piece out of the tail post there, which will allow me then to slot the tailplane in to place, and then once that's in place, then that will nicely line up with my elevator, like so. Get that in place. My elevator will then be sitting on the back of that tail post. You can see what I'm saying. There's the front of the joining bar for the elevator. Now what I should have done, if I'd thought ahead and if I'd looked ahead early enough, I should have said, well, I'm not going to put a joining piece in here. I'll have the two halves of the elevator, literally halves, have them separate and have separate controls for each half. That would have been far easier, because I could have then not bothered about where this is all going, because the elevators will stick in afterwards. Anyway, I didn't, so we are where we are. Apart from that, yeah, there's lots of cutting, lots of sanding that has been done to get things to fit in place. Lots still to be done. I got these big chunks of balsa here on the fuselage, on the sides of the fuselage for the cockpit. Quite why they have to be as thick as that. They've got to be sanded, yes, to shape, I know that, but even so, I don't really think there was a need to have them as thick as that. Once I've sanded those to shape, then I will insert some bits of ply so that the cockpit canopy can screw into that and be mounted. That's assuming I'm still going to go with the full canopy there, which sits over like that. The alternative, I said, I think in my preamble to this, was, well, maybe I'll just have a windscreen sticking up here, but I've gone off that idea. I'm now thinking of, yeah, I'll fit the canopy in place and have a pilot, which you can see. Another idea I had, and this is me thinking ahead, I've got my V-twin laser, let's bring that down here, my V-twin laser sticking out here, and I was talking about having like drag pipes coming down the side of the fuselage. Various people have commented online about, well, yeah, I like the idea of pipes sticking up, which then led me to think, well, do I really need to go to the hassle of having those pipes down there just really for looks? Another alternative for just the mulling over this idea is I'll have my laser V-twin there. Well, I can copy the cylinder heads and 3D print some other cylinder heads and maybe have cylinder heads sticking out of this bit of the fuselage here. So maybe a V6 or a V8 or even a V12. Have a bank of 6 cylinders, so 5 dummies each side, plus obviously the real one there. So there'll be the real one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, filling in this space here. So a massive bank of, that would be really sort of cylinders, sorry, finish my sentence. A massive bank of cylinders, V12 mock cylinders, let into this deck. That might look quite good. Really into the Mad Max type theme of a V12 powered plane. Absolutely crazy. And that would get over the problem of having a long pipe right the way down the side of the fuselage, which looks all right, but not as manic as having like a V12 there. So that's just an idea. Maybe you've got your own thoughts on that. If so, put your comments in the video. Always welcome comments. Love to hear what you guys have to say and think about that. But so I thought I'd bring you up to date, because it has been a few days since I said I would post a video, but I thought I'd bring you up to date with that. So yeah, that's the building board. Next on the building board, list of things to do for the fuselage. Once I've got the turtle deck finished, then I can turn my attention then to this end here. I've got the fuselage, the undercarriage has come through. Carbon copies, Stuart of Carbon Copies, done a great job there. Lovely carbon fibre fuselage. So that's going to be mounted on the front, and in order to mount that I need to have a ply plate which will go in there. But obviously my fuel tanks have got it, or fuel tank has got to go in there, so I'm probably going to have a ply plate there glued in place, and that will still give me room for maintenance on the fuel tank. Or fuel tanks, I may put 2 tanks in, I don't know yet. So that's where we are, guys. Well, this is the closing video. I'm not going to do it in the office, I'll do it whilst I'm out in the workshop. You can see what I've done, you see the progress that I've made. I haven't been able to work on it much over the last few days, to be perfectly honest, but I have made progress, which is the main thing. And I've broken the back of the problem area anyway, and all of it's in your mind, trying to get it sorted out. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? So anyway, I've achieved that, which is great. My thoughts are now in line for the front of the fuselage for the tank area. Like I said in the build part of the video, any comments you've got to make regards my idea of a dummy replica like V12 based on laser cylinders, please put them below. Or any other options you may think that I might like to hear about, please put those below as well. Next video should hopefully be in a couple of days' time. Once again, it won't be showing me do the work, it will just be showing what I've done rather than as I go along and show the build. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Put your likes below, thumbs up below, put any comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. That's it. So that's a wrap. See you in a couple of days' time. Thanks for watching, guys.